A woman, once married, must be obedient, gentle, selfless, and above all, must strive to please her in-laws. This familiar saying has been passed down like gospel in many Asian households. It sits quietly in wedding speeches, in the advice given by mothers to daughters, and in the subtle expectations that come with marriage. Over time, it becomes more than just a saying, it becomes a cultural rulebook. It tells women who they should be once they enter a new family: soft-spoken, accommodating and visible when needed, and endlessly giving. She must adapt to her new surroundings, not the other way around. She must win the hearts of her husband's family, often at the cost of silencing her own needs. And for generations, countless women have followed this script. They have reshaped themselves into the ideal daughter-in-law, someone who doesn't talk back, doesn't take up space, doesn't complain, and never puts herself first. Their lives become a balancing act of sacrifice and silence, of duty and denial. But here's the uncomfortable question we rarely dare to ask. In trying so hard to become this ideal, how much of herself does a woman have to lose? Her voice, her boundaries, her personality, sometimes even her dreams. Because when the role of a daughter-in-law becomes a performance, a daily act of pleasing, adjusting, and enduring, authenticity gets buried. A woman begins to shrink herself to fit into someone else's version of who she should be. She learns to say yes, even when her soul is screaming no. She learns to smile through discomfort, to apologize for things that are not her fault, and to carry the emotional weight of keeping a household peaceful even when it's built on inequality. The tragedy lies not just in what she gives up, but in how normalized this self-erasure has become. It's applauded. It's praised. She is called a good wife, a respectful daughter-in-law, a woman who knows her place. But perhaps it's time to rewrite the narrative. Because being a good daughter-in-law should not mean losing your identity. Pleasing others should not require betraying yourself. Marriage should not be a point of transformation, where a woman is expected to mold herself to fit a family system that gives her little space to simply be. It's not disobedient to set boundaries. It's not disrespectful to have opinions. And it's not selfish to protect your own sense of self. Maybe the real question isn't, is she pleasing her in-laws? Maybe it's, is she still at peace with herself? The inherited burden of being a good daughter-in-law. Across many cultures, especially in Asia, the image of a good daughter-in-law is rooted in traditional values that prioritize family harmony over individual well-being. A woman is expected to manage the household efficiently without complaints, be respectful and submissive to her in-laws, treat her husband's parents as her own, and above all, sacrifice her needs for the happiness of others. While these expectations may seem like signs of maturity and responsibility on the surface, they often become silent contracts, ones that ask women to trade autonomy for approval. The pressure to be agreeable, accommodating, and emotionally generous isn't just encouraged. It's enforced, often through subtle guilt, comparison with others, or even outright criticism. From the very first days of marriage, the unspoken message is clear. Your worth is tied to how well you blend in, how little trouble you cause, and how much of yourself you're willing to give up. What's more troubling is that these standards are rarely questioned because they are seen as part of being raised right. A woman who doesn't meet these expectations isn't just judged. She is shamed. If she speaks up, she's labeled disrespectful. If she asserts boundaries, she's called selfish. If she prioritizes her own mental health, she's accused of being too modern, too cold, or too independent. It's a no-win situation where compliance is rewarded and individuality is punished. But is pleasing everyone really the measure of a woman's worth? Or is it the quiet erasure of her identity? We don't talk enough about the emotional cost of constantly performing for acceptance. We overlook the burnout, the loneliness, and the quiet resentment that builds up over years of emotional labor. In trying to fit the mold of the perfect daughter-in-law, women often abandon the parts of themselves that make them whole, their quirks, their voice, their dreams, their right to say no. And in cultures where divorce is taboo and a woman's status is still heavily tied to her role within the family, the pressure to endure becomes even greater. This isn't to say that respect, care, and cooperation don't matter in family life. They absolutely do. But respect should be mutual. Care should flow in both directions. And no woman should have to disappear in order to be accepted. It's time to redefine what it means to be a good daughter-in-law, not as someone who loses herself in the process of adaptation, but as someone who brings her full self, her thoughts, her values, her voice, into the family she joins. A good daughter-in-law should not be measured by how quiet she can be, but by how authentically she can live while still fostering connection and respect. Because in the end, true family harmony doesn't come from one person's endless sacrifice. It comes from shared empathy, mutual understanding, and the freedom to be real. What does good even mean? Let's examine what society often defines as a good daughter-in-law. She is agreeable, not assertive. She works tirelessly without expecting gratitude. She makes adjustments and then more without complaint. She accepts traditions and decisions, even when they contradict her values. She is praised not for her individuality, but for her ability to fit in, adapt, and never make things difficult. These definitions are less about kindness and more about compliance. They are less about mutual respect and more about quiet submission, a performance that demands women's silence, their own truths in order to maintain a facade of harmony. A woman is considered good when she's invisible, when she doesn't challenge, doesn't speak up, doesn't resist. Her value is measured by how smoothly she blends into the family she marries into, not by how genuinely she is able to be herself within it. Even worse, these ideals are upheld not just by men or older generations, but often by other women, mothers-in-law, relatives, neighbors, or even a woman's own mother who says, "I went through it too, so you should be able to handle it." It becomes a generational baton passed from one woman to another, not out of malice, but out of normalization. Suffering in silence becomes a badge of honor, and endurance is mistaken for strength. This internalized standard creates a toxic cycle where women become both the victims and enforcers of the same outdated norms. A mother-in-law who once felt small in her own marriage now expects her daughter-in-law to do the same, as if obedience is a rite of passage. Text. A woman who spent years ignoring her own desires may discourage her daughter from voicing hers, mistaking survival for wisdom. Instead of breaking the chain, many perpetuate it, because pain, once endured without healing, often becomes a tool of control. The real tragedy is that this version of goodness strips away a woman's right to complexity. She is not allowed to be tired, angry, frustrated, or ambitious. She cannot have opinions that challenge the status quo. She cannot say, "I need help," without being labeled ungrateful. In trying to be everything for everyone, she forgets she is someone too. We need to start asking hard questions. Who benefits from these expectations? What does a woman lose when she is told that sacrifice equals virtue? And how much longer will we applaud women for how much of themselves they're willing to give up? It's time to unlearn the belief that being a good daughter-in-law means being passive, compliant, and self-erasing. A woman can be kind without being submissive. She can be respectful without silencing her truth. She can contribute to the family without losing her identity. True family doesn't demand you shrink to fit it. It expands to include all of who you are. The real cost of always trying to please. On the surface, trying to please everyone may seem admirable, even noble. It's often praised as maturity, as selflessness, as the right thing to do. A woman who bends, compromises, and adjusts is seen as wise, even virtuous. But beneath the surface, this lifestyle of emotional labor takes an undeniable toll, chipping away at a woman's mental well-being, sense of self, and even her relationships. Mental strain and emotional burnout. Living under the unspoken rule of always do well and always be liked is exhausting. Every word, every action, every decision must be filtered through the lens of, will this upset someone? Will this make me look bad? Will they think I'm not good enough? This constant self-monitoring leads to anxiety, overthinking, and chronic stress. Instead of being a safe space, family gatherings become stages where she must perform, and any slip, no matter how small, can be met with judgment, gossip, or cold silence. Over time, she internalizes the idea that her worth depends on perfection, a standard no one can realistically meet. Erosion of identity. Perhaps the most devastating cost of all is the slow fading of her sense of self. In order to fit into the image of a good daughter-in-law, many women gradually distance themselves from the very things that make them feel alive. A passion for art, a job that brings joy, friendships that offer support, even personal opinions, all are placed on hold or quietly let go. Why? Because they don't align with the expectations of her role. What begins as just adjusting for now becomes a permanent loss of selfhood. One day, she may look in the mirror and wonder, who is this woman? Where did I go? Family tensions hidden beneath the surface. Ironically, sacrificing one's truth for the sake of peace often leads to deeper tensions. A woman who never speaks up may appear calm on the outside, but inside she's filled with suppressed emotions, resentment, sadness, even anger. These emotions, left unspoken for too long, will find their way out through passive-aggressive behavior, sudden emotional outburst, or quiet withdrawal from family life. What was intended to keep the family together ends up creating more distance and misunderstanding. Lack of recognition and the myth of endless strength. In many households, the more a woman gives, the less she is seen. Her efforts are not celebrated but expected. The meals she prepares, the emotional labor she carries, the sacrifices she makes, all are quietly absorbed into the routine, with little acknowledgement. Yet the moment she slips, even slightly, criticism comes quickly. In this toxic dynamic, perfection isn't rewarded, it's demanded, and exhaustion is mislabeled as strength. She's told, "You're strong, you can handle it," when what she really needs is support, rest, and recognition. The silent epidemic of self-erasure. These consequences don't happen overnight. They accumulate day by day, year by year, until a woman realizes she has disappeared in her own life. She becomes known not for who she is, but for the roles she plays: wife, daughter-in-law, caretaker. Her feelings, dreams, and voice are buried under layers of duty. And the saddest part, many don't even see this as a problem. It's just how things are. It's tradition. It's being raised right. It's what a woman should do. But is it? Why do women still keep trying? If the cost is so high, why do women continue to push themselves to meet these expectations? Cultural conditioning plays a significant role. Generations of upbringing have glorified endurance and self-sacrifice as the ultimate virtues of womanhood. A good woman endures in silence, or so we are told. There is also the fear of judgment. Speaking up or setting boundaries risks being labeled disrespectful or selfish. The shame associated with being seen as a bad daughter-in-law can be deeply isolating. Surprisingly, much of the pressure comes from other women. Phrases like, "I did it, so should you," turn pain into a measuring stick, rather than a reason for change. Instead of solidarity, it creates a chain of inherited suffering. And at the heart of it all is the very human desire to be accepted. Most women genuinely want to be embraced by their partner's family, not out of weakness, but out of love. Sadly, that desire is too often weaponized. A new kind of daughter-in-law, one who stays true to herself. It's time to rethink what it means to be a good daughter-in-law. True strength lies not in how much a woman bends, but in how firmly she stands in her truth. Assertiveness does not equal disrespect. Saying no when needed, expressing opinions, or protecting one's peace are not signs of rebellion. They are signs of self-respect. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is a way to preserve emotional health and build healthier relationships. Respect that flows both ways is far more sustainable than blind obedience. Partnership, not hierarchy, should define a marriage. When husbands support their wives in creating a balanced, respectful family dynamic, one where both sides are honored, they redefine love as active participation, not passive tradition. A woman's value does not lie in silence. It lies in her ability to remain whole while sharing her life with others. Authenticity is not only her right, it is her power. Final thoughts. The traditional concept of the perfect daughter-in-law is no longer just outdated, it is actively damaging. Rooted in centuries of rigid cultural expectations, this ideal demands that a woman bend, mute her voice, and erase parts of herself just to fit into a narrowly defined role. But in today's world, where individuality and mutual respect are increasingly recognized as the foundations of healthy relationships, such a notion feels suffocating and unfair. Women should never have to lose themselves in order to be loved or accepted. Their value should not be measured by how well they can suppress their desires, their emotions, or their dreams for the sake of others. Nor should they have to sacrifice their inner peace just to belong to a family or community. True belonging comes from being accepted as one's authentic self, not from performing a role scripted by outdated customs. Marriage and the extended family that comes with it should be a sanctuary, a space where both partners grow together, support each other, and find joy in shared experiences. It should never be a stage for one person to constantly perform while the other watches passively, or a place where one individual is expected to shrink themselves, diminish their presence, or live in constant self-denial to keep the peace. Healthy relationships thrive on balance, open communication, and mutual respect, not on sacrifice and silence. What we need is a shift in perspective, from seeing marriage as a system of roles and obligations to understanding it as a partnership based on equality and empathy. The narrative that glorifies self-sacrifice as a virtue for women, especially daughters-in-law, must be challenged. It is time to replace those invisible chains with respect for autonomy, emotional well-being, and personal boundaries. A closing truth: being a good daughter-in-law does not mean losing yourself. It does not mean submitting to endless demands, silencing your voice, or sacrificing your happiness for the sake of appearances. If a home demands that you give up your well-being just to survive within it, then that is not a home. That is a prison. True love and family acceptance are not conditional on erasing who you are. They are built on understanding, compassion, and the freedom to be yourself. Women deserve to live fully, to pursue their passions, and to be valued for all that they bring to the family, not just for the sacrifices they make. It's time to rewrite the story and redefine what it truly means to be a good daughter-in-law, one who thrives rather than merely survives. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.